Circa Tonight, powered by SharpStack. Matt Brown and Steven Anders counting you down to Thursday night football, running through every single NFL game here in week number 12. I'm here in Las Vegas, where the original Circa was located and built, and Steven sitting in the brand spanking new, shiny new toy there in Kentucky. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. You see all these big TVs behind me? It is beautiful here, man. I live up in Louisville, Kentucky, come down here to do this show down at Circa Sportsbook Kentucky every week, talk about every game on the NFL slate. And I can't wait to talk about week 12, man, because I got a lot of bets this week, and I can't wait to chop it up with you.
As we said, it is Thursday night football tonight. It is the Buffalo Bills on the road at the Houston Texans, and some action here as we approach kickoff. Of course, we're still hour 15 minutes away from this going down, but this had gotten all the way up to 6, as you can see on your screen if you're watching along, and if you're on the radio side of things, it is 4.5 at Circa. It is 5.5 at other books around the country. There is a flat 5, but there is not a 6 to be found. So everybody that could find a 6 has backed the Houston Texans here at home against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, obviously no C.J. Stroud in this game. Davis Mills will get another start. Stroud with the concussion. Some injuries for the Bills, too, though. Dalton Kincaid will not play at tight end. Keon Coleman has been benched for a second straight week, so we'll see some combination of Shavers, the undrafted rookie. Khalil Shakir will play tonight after missing practice this week for the birth of his child, so he is back and playing in the slot. But also the Texans are missing a cornerback on defense and their nickelback Jalen Petrie. And Matt, I'm gonna go out on a limb here right off the bat. And this is never something I like to do and go against some market steam here, but I think the Texans are being a little overrated here, especially with Davis Mills as the quarterback tonight. I know the Bills have been, on the seesaw here. Any given week they could just lay an egg, it seems, but I think that there's enough in the matchups here for me to bet the Bills, especially at the best of the numbers so far since the steam has started to come back. I like the Bills tonight, and I don't know what you think. I know it's always scary to go against market movement, but this is the best offensive line in football, in my opinion, and it should neutralize the biggest strength for this Texans team in their defense and their pass rush.
Yeah, it is. I happen to do a show at Circa in Las Vegas on Sundays as the lines are coming out, right? And so as the lines are populating, and this thing opened at 3.5 in favor of the Bills once they came out on reopen, Steven, on after the games there on Sunday. And I was under the assumption that C.J. Stroud wasn't going to play. It's very hard to get back on a short week whenever the new concussion protocol steps that you have to do in order to clear. And so I just assumed it was going to be Davis Mills again. And so I thought 3 was too short in this thing. So I thought 3 was too short. I thought 6 might have been pushing it a little bit, but certainly back down to 4.5. I think it's definitely playable here on Buffalo. Interesting as well in tandem, Steven, we have seen, which kind of seems counterintuitive, which is the backing of the Texans, but the total has gone up a point. Like you would think
right.
that if it was people backing the Texans, you would think low scoring, gross game, defense dominates, all of that. But instead, this thing was 43.5 until a couple hours ago. And here we are at 44.5.
Yeah, I disagree with that too, to be quite frank with you. I mean, I think this Texans offense still has left a lot to be desired with Davis Mills at quarterback. It's still one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. And these 2 starts with Davis Mills were against the Jaguars and the Titans. And despite that, he still only put up league average numbers by EPA and success rate in that small sample size. So,
by the way, had to kick a walk-off field goal against the worst team in the NFL.
The worst team we've seen post-pandemic, in my opinion. 100% right. So any path to success for this Texans team has to be through their defense limiting opposing offenses, in my opinion. And if we look at the Texans defense since their 0-3 start, they are top 10 in these advanced metrics, but this is the schedule of quarterbacks they've played. Cam Ward twice, Cooper Rush. They gave up 27 points and lost to Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. Mac Jones, Bo Nix, and they gave up a bunch of points to Trevor Lawrence because they couldn't stop the run game for the Jags. So that's not exactly a murderer's row of quarterbacks that has been bolstering their advanced metrics. This is a big step up in class against an MVP in Josh Allen against the number one offensive line in football in the Buffalo Bills. I think this is a little bit too much recency bias with the Texans, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just for me in this is okay. You can get after this Bills team on the ground, right? So they have a run defense that is in the bottom 8 in the NFL in just about every single category. Now, we don't know for sure if that's by design or not. We have seen teams here recently since the NFL switched to such a pass-heavy league and it favors receivers and all of that, which is, hey, if you want to run, which is less efficient anyway, go right ahead, and we're just going to try to focus down on the pass, right? So, again, I'm not saying 100% that this isn't some by design, but certainly you don't want to be in the bottom 6 or 7 in the league and all of that. However, you are looking at a Texans team that has no run game to speak of whatsoever. And if you want to say like, well, they've switched to Woody Marks and all that, which is true. And by the way, this is definitely Woody Marks' backfield at this point. He has gotten 78% of the carries over the last 2 weeks. He is RB1 there for the Texans. But if you go out to week 6, Stephen, when he at least started to kind of really work himself into this lineup, they are still the second worst rush EPA team in the NFL, only ahead of the very lowly Raiders out there. So, I mean, if you're saying like, well, it changed when Woody, well, I mean, not really, right? I mean, so they're worse than the Titans, you know? I mean, they're worse than the Saints. They're worse than the Browns when it comes to rush EPA. And so if you think that that's the weakness of this Bills defense, I don't know that the Texans are equipped to take advantage of that.
100% agree with you. I think it's a good cap on your part. I think there's just this automatic assumption because a lot of us play fantasy football and he's putting up better numbers than Nick Chubb that they're actually become a more efficient rushing attack. And you very eloquently stated why that has not been the case if you look under the hood at the metrics here. So, you know, this to me kind of has the same vibes of when people were a little bit down on the Bills and they played that Panthers game a few weeks back and people wanted to take the points with the dog against the Bills and they just steamrolled Carolina. Now, I know Andy Dalton started that game, but Davis Mills is starting this game. And there is, I think, something to the top tier of the NFL playing, you know, a third, fourth, fifth tier team. And this, whether you want to argue that's the case with the Texans, because this is a good defense, bad offense team, it's a bad offense. It's not explosive enough. So I think they're going to have to probably score 20 points in this game to be able to hang with this number. So I'm out on that. I think this is a huge step up in class for the Texans. I know they're at home on a short week, and Buffalo's defense has left a lot to be desired, but still Josh Allen. I like Buffalo here. I feel pretty good about it despite the market movement. And it wouldn't be the first time that the market came and slapped me in the face, to be honest with you, but I like the matchups here for Buffalo. What about props, Matt? What do you like here? Yeah,
so I played over on Shaver's receptions at 1.5. I'm going to assume that number has just been blistered. We can take a look at what they've got going on over at SharpStack, which, by the way, TNF Live is your code if you want to take advantage of 7 free days over there, and you'll get 25% off whenever you decide to go ahead and subscribe, which you will, because it is so incredibly valuable to a bettor. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty juiced. I mean, it's 148, 14. I guess there's a 135, I guess, which is at least somewhat playable out there at MGM. So I would at least point to that a little bit. Stephen, healthy and active again for Keon Coleman. They put up 44 points last week on the Bucs, and I think we're going to just see a decent amount of the same. And Lassiter with Shavers was actually getting looked at a decent amount in that one. And honestly, I think that his role expands a little bit considering how well they played last week. I know a lot of people are probably going to look and say like, oh, well, the obvious play is Josh Palmer. And I actually put the under on Palmer. If you look, he hadn't had over 2 receptions in a game since week 1. I mean, like he just kind of is what he is. He gets 3 or 4 targets a game. He catches half of them. And that's just kind of his role here in this offense. Gabe Davis got elevated off the practice squad. Of course, as you well know, Gabe Davis very familiar with Josh Allen in this offense, and they tried to force feed him the ball a few times last week as well. And so I think if anyone benefits from the Keon Coleman stuff, I think it's actually Shavers and Dalton Kincaid being out as well. So I took the over on receptions. And listen, I understand 135 juice is a little steep, but if you want to take an alt on 2.5 and get some plus money, I think I'm fine with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of this wide receiver core at this point is that it's a committee, right? It's by rotation. There isn't a guy who's playing 100% of the snaps. Shavers played about half the snaps last week. Khalil Shakir's the slot guy, so he's playing about half the snaps because they're going to roll out 2 wide receiver sets with 2 tight ends half the time. Even Josh Palmer has been about half the snaps as well. So this is a total committee, rotation, whatever you want to call it, for the Buffalo wide receiver core. And we at least saw that Shavers has a role. Hit him for a nice deep touchdown last week. Palmer got his 5 targets, but again, only 50% of the snaps a week ago for Josh Palmer. So I like where your head's at. I went a slightly different route. I like Khalil Shakir in this game. I'm a little nervous that he missed practice and was away from the team for the birth of his child. I don't know if that means his snaps will get reduced anymore, but he's a regular player for them. And with Kincaid out, I think they really need Shakir, so that makes me a little more confident in it if you look at it from a matchup standpoint. So Shakir's the slot guy, as we mentioned, and if we look at where the Texans tend to give up receptions, it is kind of in that slot situation. They are allowing the 5th most receptions to slot wide receivers this year. That stat from Joe Holka, so appreciate him tweeting that out. We're looking at 4.5 right now for Khalil Shakir. Minus 115, the best juice over at BetMGM. But I took it a step further. I'm betting Khalil Shakir for an anytime touchdown tonight. You can get that anywhere between like 3 and 4 to 1, essentially, for Khalil Shakir. I think without Dalton Kincaid, he becomes more important in this matchup in particular. What do you think about Khalil Shakir, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only concern basically comes down to what you just said, which is just that, like, Josh Allen just doesn't have a favorite receiver, right? I mean, like any given day, it could be anybody, And so with Shakir kind of like being the de facto one in there, it just
certainly priced like it.
Yeah, he's kind of like the de facto one, and I just don't know if he actually gets the one or not. But I mean, listen, I don't hate it. I think if there's any receiver to have a big game, it's Shakir. So I think that there's a decent look there. The only other thing I want to mention here, and then we'll get to some of the other games. We'll circle back to this one at the end whenever we see how the line moves by the time this thing's getting ready to kick off. But Steven, Josh Allen, rushing prop is market low, 32.5. This Houston team, even if you like this offensive line from the Bills, I mean, they get pressure a lot. I mean, they get pressure a ton. And I do wonder if we don't see Josh Allen, take off 4 or 5 different times in this game. And if he takes off 5 times in this game, then I really like the over here, because if he's taking off, dude's getting 7 or 8 yards. I mean, that's just kind of the way Josh Allen is. And so I think that's at least interesting, maybe from a same game parlay proposition. If you like the Bills side of this, then I think that you can kind of like throw that in an SGP. And I think maybe, to counter that, maybe on the other side, Nico Collins obviously did at least show a little bit of rapport with Davis Mills. And then Woody Marks should like never leave the field. Nick Chubb doesn't catch passes like at all. So if you think this could be a run out, then there might be some garbage time stuff to be had for a couple of those guys.
The Bills played basically this exact Texans defense a year ago. There's a lot of turnover for both, or a lot of same players from both of these teams from a year ago. And Josh Allen only ran 4 times, but it was for 54 yards. So, maybe a lot of man behind these pass rushers where heads are turned and not looking at the quarterback, and Allen's getting chunk plays on the ground there. As far as his running on the season, we're looking at this, low 30s total at the sports books, 32 to 34.5, and 40 yards last week. From week 2 to week 6, he went over this mark every single game. So a couple games more recently that, against Carolina, the outcome wasn't in the balance, so his rushing total was lower there. This is line like it's going to be a more competitive game. So certainly like Josh Allen as a weapon here in the rushing game for sure. Well, I do like that look.
Yeah, I think it's just again, I don't know if you want to play it. I don't know if you want to play it as a solo bet, but certainly you can use it, Stephen, to kind of like to tell a story, right? Like, so that's kind of what I do with the same game parlay stuff if I ever do it, which is just I'm going to tell a story and then we'll see if the story comes to fruition. But that's kind of how I want to go about it.
I'm with you, man. And I was on the wide receiver by committee angle. I always like situations like that, especially with an explosive offense where I can even do an inverse correlation same game parlay. If I can find a guy who's lined it at least 2.5 receptions, or maybe I can get like a 2 reception, 40 to 60 yard game and a touchdown where it's not going to be priced as properly as it would be for a same game parlay where it's correlated, where most people are just going to take, 5 receptions, 100 yards and a touchdown. You're not going to get true odds on that because of the correlation, but the inverse gives you exponentially higher odds than what the fair odds would be for each leg of that. But it might actually fit the role in the offense and the role of the player in that offense. I think the Bills set up for a nice little situation for that. Wouldn't do it with Shavers because it's only 1.5. So you need like a 1 catch, 50-yard touchdown to hit a massive SGP. But like that 2.5 is where I start looking for things like that.
Broncos, Chargers, Dolphins, and Commanders all on bye this week. The first game we'll get to outside of Thursday Night Football, Pittsburgh Steelers on the road at Chicago Bears. This is Bears 2.5 at home here over the Steelers. 45.5 is a prevailing total out there in the market. Now, Steven, the interesting thing here in this one is we aren't quite sure who's going to play quarterback for the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers has a fracture in his left wrist. It is his non-throwing hand. Apparently, if you listen to them, he is pressing to play. Mason Rudolph, I thought, stepped in and looked fine, I guess, in this one. So, I don't know. Pretty interesting deal. I don't know how much you value the difference between Aaron Rodgers and Mason Rudolph at this point in their careers.
I think week-to-week volatility comes with a backup quarterback like Mason Rudolph, but I also think he's more likely to be able to push the ball down the field and get more chunk plays than Aaron Rodgers can at this point in his career. I mean, the ADOT is, among the lowest, if not the lowest, every single week in the league with Aaron Rodgers at this point with the way this offense is coordinated. So I'm in a weird spot where I don't want to make any bet right now because depending on who the quarterback is, I think the market's going to move a little bit more. If this is the full 3 and it's Mason Rudolph, or, in a perfect world, 3.5 above the key number, I would be interested in taking the Steelers at that point. But I don't know if we're going to get that. It's trending more towards Aaron Rodgers is going to play. And at that point, I don't think it's going to be 3 with Aaron Rodgers. So let's just see if we're already at 2.5 based on speculation that it will be him. Maybe we get a little bit more. If it is Rodgers playing with a compromised left wrist, I'm going to be interested in Chicago, I think. But as we broadcast here on Thursday evening, I need more clarity on the Chicago injury report because they have a ton of injuries on the defensive side of the ball, including 3 linebackers that are back-to-back DNP. Their number 2 cornerback and Stevenson might miss, and their number 1 cornerback, Jalen Johnson, we don't know if they're going to activate him off IR yet. So just a lot of injury question marks in this game and no decision I can make right now, Matt.
Yeah, this is definitely a post-Friday injury report type game to make a decision. I'm with you. I mean, other side of 3, I think I play the Steelers a lot. Like, I think I'd like him a decent amount because that means Mason Rudolph is playing. And I actually think I favor Mason Rudolph over Aaron Rodgers at this point. But if this gets back down to closer to pick because Aaron Rodgers is going to play, who has been atrocious this year, I could see some interest on Chicago for me. I liked what they did last week. They replaced Zacchaeus with Burden, and Burden played 100% of the snaps in the 3 wide set. He's obviously a more explosive player than Zacchaeus is. I think Ben Johnson's starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, starting to understand who these players are a little bit more. And the switch to getting Monangai, more involved and all of that. Like, I think they're trending in the right direction. I understand that if you want to call air quote luckiest team in the NFL because of the turnovers and all the different stuff like that. But if we're going to say that, we should also say the positive parts, which is I think Ben Johnson is starting to kind of come into his own here, specifically on the offensive side. Now, Caleb Williams might hold him back with all of that, but I do like what he's doing, and I do think that Chicago at 1, which is basically a pick, would be a play for me.
I'm right there with you, man. If that's what happens and that's the way this trends closer to kickoff, I'm going to be right there. The funny part is, for those who haven't heard the show across multiple weeks, this is really two teams that we both don't love, and Chicago is playing a second game in a row against the team that we don't like. I think we were both kind of low on the Minnesota and Chicago last week. We just like the price on Chicago. And I think, again, Matt, we both don't really like either of these teams, but we might like the price on Chicago yet again this week. So just goes to show you, when you're betting, it's not about your opinion of a team. It's about the price and the range of outcomes that come with that price.
New York Football Jets are on the road at the Baltimore Ravens. This is 13.5 in favor of the Ravens at home. Over the Jets, 44.5, the prevailing total out there. This was 14.5, and people went in and they scooped up the 14.5s, including this guy right here, because, again, Stephen, I just made the call. I made the speculation. They could not run Fields out again. I was 100% positive they were going to make the switch to Tyrod Taylor. Now, whether that makes a difference or not, I don't know, but this Baltimore team is at least left a little bit to be desired for me. And so with that, I took the other side of 2 touchdowns in it. It's a smaller play for me. I just was kind of playing a conviction, which was that the Jets were going to move quarterbacks. It probably was going to move the line, and that also Baltimore hasn't really blown my skirt up quite yet. But that being said, I need them to win because they're going to be my survivor pick this week. So, I don't care. I don't care if you win by 1, but just don't win by 14.5. Don't win by 15, I should say.
Yeah, if you have them, it's the slam dunk play this week. And I'm actually seeing some updated ownership projections where they might not actually be the most popular. I'm seeing some Niners ownership growing this week, and that's the case. It is a huge slam dunk to take the Ravens this week against the Jets. I love when we wind up betting the same thing. We hadn't talked about it yet before the show. I also bet Jets plus 14.5 in this game. So what could possibly go wrong there with Aaron Glenn and Tyrod Taylor? But I agree with you, man. This is a lot for a Ravens team that hasn't quite shown it yet. I need to see Lamar Jackson getting back to running as much as he did when this was an explosive offense. And switching to Tyrod Taylor kind of gives me some hope that if it doesn't go our way, the back door might still be open because he can actually throw a football, unlike Justin Fields at this point. If we look at the 2 games he's played this year to start off, week 2 against the Bills, he had a 44% success rate versus 20% for Fields. And in week 3, he started that game at Tampa Bay. He had a 52% success rate. That would be a top 10 rate this year by success rate. Now, his EPA in that game got screwed up because he threw a pick 6, and that's always the danger when you're betting on a backup quarterback. But at least in terms of down-to-down metric, Tyrod is a serviceable quarterback who can complete the ball accurately. And I also will say that this Jets defense, I think, is not the nut low of the Cincinnati Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys, that really bottom tier of the league. The Jets D has actually been respectable by success rate for most of the year. They've just had horrible turnover luck where they've only forced 1 takeaway the entire season. So I like it. It's a lot of points in the NFL, and I'm right there with you, man. And I think we started to see this tick up closer back to 14. Once it hit 13.5, I would still bet it at 14 as well.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting matchup. I mean, if you're the Jets, too, Baltimore run defense, pretty porous. They run just a ton. I mean, just an absolute ton of nickel. And so it's just maybe just put 2 tight ends in there, see how much you can run it on them, and if that's the case, that looks good for us with the big number on here. I think 13.5 is still playable. Obviously, we don't want anything under that. New York Football Giants are on the road at Detroit. This is 10.5 in favor of the Lions at home. Over the Giants, 50 is the prevailing total out there in the market. Steven Jackson Dart was able to practice again today. It's moving in the right direction for him to play, though he still has yet to clear concussion protocol. Of course, the Lions last week fall to the Eagles. If you want to call it, the phantom pass interference and all the stuff like that, doesn't really matter. that Eagles defense dominated for the vast majority of the game over this Lions team. But the same could be said for the Lions defense against the Eagles as well. So really good defense there in Detroit. Kelvin Shepard doing a fantastic job coordinating that defense. Does it matter to you if it's Jackson Dart or Jameis Winston? And what do you think about this line? Is this line under the assumption it's going to be Jackson Dart? Is it under the assumption it's going to be Jameis Winston? What say you?
I bet the over 49.5. So I don't care a ton who's starting at quarterback for the Giants. I think Jackson Dart is a better quarterback than Jameis Winston, but I also think Jameis Winston in his own ways can contribute to an over, as we've seen over the years. So I don't care who the quarterback is for the Giants for that over bet. I just think this is a huge get-right spot for the Lions coming off of a couple of losses back in the Dome against a Giants defense that has just continued to get more and more injured. 4 cornerbacks on the injury report this week. One of their pass rushers, Kayvon Thibodeau, back-to-back DNP. Over the last 4 weeks, the Giants are dead last stopping the run by EPA and 30th by rush D success rate. How's that going to go against Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery? And then how's that going to help Jared Goff feeding off of that successful run game as well? I think the Lions get into the 30s here. Wouldn't surprise me if they have a ceiling outcome and get into the 40s in terms of point total here. So if we're getting at least 30 from the Lions, I need 20 from the Giants here. And I might only need 17 if the Lions get to 33. So that's kind of how I feel about this game. I think there's going to be a ton of points from the Lions, and there'll be enough here for the Giants to keep up as well.
Yeah, since Dan Campbell took over play calling 2 weeks ago, Jameson Williams has a 21% target share for this team. I think he just continues to roll. I think this is the last week that we see his passing total, his receiving total in the 50s. So I would take advantage of that this week, and then we're probably never going to see it again. I think Jameson Williams is kind of getting utilized the right way finally, and becoming more of a versatile receiver. More long-term stuff here, Stephen, for me in this one, which is Dan Campbell made a couple of very questionable calls last week. And, listen, we praise Dan Campbell all the time for trying to maximize his win percentage, trying to play the game as it should be played, because, so many people just turtle up and punt the ball away when they shouldn't and kick field goals when they shouldn't and all of that. However, he made a couple of egregious errors this past week, and I'm not sure that it doesn't have some sort of impact on the fact that he's calling plays as well now, because that's a big responsibility, right? Like, you are calling a play and then you're worried about what the next play is going to be. And you're thinking about, if we get 5 yards, this is what's going to be the next play I call, what's going to be whatever. As to where before, when you're just standing there on the sideline, your thought is, well, if we get 6, we're going to go for it. If we get 7, we're going to go for it, for whatever. Now he's having to make these decisions and call plays and all of that at the same time. I do wonder if maybe that clouded his judgment a little bit. And I just want to pay attention a little bit more here over the next couple of weeks and see if this guy that we have praised for the last 2 years of almost doing this perfectly, there's some cracks in the chinks in the armor here a little bit because of, his additional responsibility.
Perfectly valid thing to keep an eye on moving forward. My hope and my wonder is that some of those 4th down decisions were because of the wind situation in that game affecting the kicking game. I still think there were a couple times where he very easily could have kicked where he didn't and went for a 4th and 5 or 4th and 6 instead. And that's very different than going for a 4th and 2 and 4th and 3 against what I believe is the best defense in the NFL at this point. So perfectly valid reasons for you to monitor the Lions for sure, especially with, offensive line injuries. They still have a couple of guys banged up on the injury report. Secondary injuries for the Lions, they need to get healthy if we're going to have a serious conversation about them winning playoff games.
So this is very interesting. Indianapolis Colts on the road at the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is currently sitting at 3.5 in favor of the Chiefs at a lot of places. 3, though, there at Circa. But Stephen, limited today, Daniel Jones at practice for the Colts. Certainly nothing that I wanted to see, as I took a 4 that was available earlier in the week on the Colts. And coming out of a bye, it's even more concerning for me that Daniel Jones was limited at practice today with all of that. So, maybe it's precautionary, maybe it's whatever. It's certainly something that I'm going to reserve the right to buy off of this bet if tomorrow this doesn't look any better for me, because obviously if I'm going to take the Colts going on the road to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, even if I think the Chiefs are a little bit down from where they've been the last couple of years, I still need my quarterback to be healthy. I still need my quarterback to be like firing on all cylinders here. So that's at least the caveat to my Colts bet for sure.
Yeah, typically for those that don't follow injury reports, if you have a guy who was not on the injury report and he gets added on Thursday, even if it's limited, like Daniel Jones was today, that should still be sending off some alarm bells in your head about maybe this guy is not going to have enough time to get right for the game or miss it altogether. So for what it's worth, the beat reporter for the Colts that works for The Athletic said that it was more precautionary in nature, and that the reason they put him on the injury report is because the NFL is hyper focused on teams being transparent on the injury report after they had to discipline the Baltimore Ravens with a $100,000 fine earlier this year. So whether that's true or not, we'll find out later this week. But if he's banged up, then I don't feel great about my Colts bet either. I also bet Colts plus 3.5 in this game because if Daniel Jones is healthy and they're coming off this bye week, I just don't know how you can justify the Chiefs being more than a field goal favorite against one of the other top 7 teams in the NFL, unless you're just holding on to Chiefs priors from the last 3 years as tight as humanly possible. Because this defense is not as good as the one that took them to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. It's not as good as the one that got to the Super Bowl last year. This defense has taken a step back. And Matt, I still have offensive line concerns with the Kansas City Chiefs as well. So if they're going to have to play above average, amazing football to overcome what has been a below average defense in a lot of weeks, I start getting concerned about the Kansas City Chiefs against the top 1 or 2 tiers in the NFL at this point.
One thing to remember, and this played into my handicap as well in all of this. I mean, this is week 3 of Sauce Gardner being in this defense on this defense. So, stepped in on a few days notice and played, but now this is week 3, understanding of the defense much better. And by the way, Charvarius Ward is very likely to be back this week as well for this Colts team. So now you have one of the weaknesses in the NFL now becomes maybe the best cornerback tandem there is in the NFL in Sauce Gardner and Charvarius Ward. Sauce Gardner, everybody for all their, you can't pay that much for a corner, 73.7% lockdown rate this year, which means his receiver did not get separation on him 73.7% of the time. That is 8 percentage points better than the second guy. I mean,
Wow.
that's how good Sauce Gardner has been. And again, you can debate all you want, whether he was worth this, that, and the other, or whatever, but the Colts see a window, the Colts see an opportunity, and the Colts saw a weakness on their team, and they went and addressed it, and I commend them for that. And now they are going to trot back out this week, the best corner tandem, in my opinion, probably in the NFL. And Patrick Mahomes, by the way, has struggled mightily against good corners this year because he didn't have any receivers that can get any separation. And so if you take a look at him versus man, it's crazy. If you look at his scatter plot from this season compared to the last 3 years, it's night and day. And so good luck, I guess, getting some of these guys open. Now it is Andy Reid and it is Patrick Mahomes, and they'll draw some plays in the dirt and they'll probably wow us a couple times in this thing, but they're going to beat us, Steven. They got to win by 5 points. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, and the rushing defense has been a liability for the Kansas City Chiefs, and now here comes a monstrous offensive line and the likely offensive player of the year in Jonathan Taylor. So when you can't stop the run and you're taking those body blows over and over again, it makes it hard to win by margin, and it keeps your offense off the field when the other team is running the ball that successfully as well.
Speaking of winning by margin, this team's going to have to do that. The Seattle Seahawks are on the road at the Tennessee Titans as 13 to 13.5 point favorites. It is anywhere from 39.5 to 40.5, the total out there in the market for this one. And Steven, I know you have a play in this one. I don't. I will say this. Usually these big numbers, I would only take the points in the NFL. This is actually the one where I would actually go to the other side. If I were to play this one, I would lay it here. You're going to need that flat 13 though. You don't want the 13.5. So be sure and make sure that you're getting the flat 13 instead of the 13.5s that are starting to pop up out there in this one. But I think Seattle showed last week just how good that defense is. That defense overcame 4 interceptions by Sam Darnold and still was within a few feet of a field goal of winning that game against my top power rated team in the NFL in the Rams. And so I'm super, super impressed with this Seattle team. Darnold, even if he does throw it to the other team a couple times here in this one, which I don't think they're even going to have to, they can turn around and hand it off 50 times in this game if they want to and win the game. But this would be the one. This would be actually the one that I would lay it with, is where I would be taking the points in all these other ones.
For new listeners to the show, we've said it a lot, but I'll say it again. The Titans, by the metrics, I think, Matt, you would agree, has been the worst team in the NFL since 2021 by EPA and success rate, both offensively and defensively. They've been a nightmare, and the firing of the head coach has not improved it. And I know they were close against the Texans last week with Davis Mills starting, but does not give me any type of optimism moving forward here against an elite team in the NFL and the Seahawks. I bet -12 earlier in the week. I agree with Matt. You want to try and at least get 13 here, get the best of the numbers, always best practice here. So if we look at what Seattle's done on the road this year, which is obviously the concern with a lot of West Coast teams, especially one up in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle has traveled very well this year. They went on the road and dusted Pittsburgh. They dusted Arizona for 7 out of 8 quarters this year. They led at Jacksonville by 14 in the fourth quarter and covered with a final score of 20-12. They dusted the Commanders on the road by halftime. They somehow maintained my opinion of them despite Sam Darnold throwing 4 interceptions in that game. Matt, I completely agree with you that if it's possible to come out of a game still optimistic about a team despite the quarterback playing that poorly, they pulled it off against the Rams. Mm-hmm. So I certainly acknowledge that Sam Darnold's going to have to get this monkey off his back at some point, or we're going to have to stop betting them. But we made money on them last week. We bet them to cover 3. They lost by 2. So that's a win in our book over here in the betting world. What are the Titans going to do against this team? So unless you want to play narrative and say it's a huge letdown spot, I mean, that's fine, but based on everything Seattle has shown on the field this year and everything the Titans have shown on the field, including in a lot of similar spots for Seattle this year, they have dominated and just dusted teams. So this is one of my favorite bets of the week, frankly.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you saw what the Titans did against a good defense last week. They're getting another good defense this week. Except you're getting a much, much, much better offense with Seattle than what you got last week with the Texans. So, yeah, I don't see a huge path for success here in this one. All right. We got the Minnesota Vikings on the road at the Green Bay Packers. This is 6.5 in favor of the Packers at home. 41.5 is our total. You got JJ McCarthy coming out this week, which maybe if you're the PR person, you would have cut this off or something. Talking about how difficult it is to make the transition to the NFL, despite the fact he's been there for a year and a half now already. And like saying how difficult everything has been for him and all of that. Maybe it's like, let's just not say that stuff. Let's talk about that in private. Let's not say that into the microphone here with that one. But, hey, fortunately, you're getting the Packers, who just refuse to go out and beat inferior teams the way that they should, which is why this line is only sitting at 6.5, because if you look at the talent on the field outside of the wide receiver position with Justin Jefferson, I mean, everything leans towards the Packers, but they just refuse to take the talent and go out there and put it on the field for 60 minutes.
Yeah, but I still bet the Packers in this game, man, because I started looking as deep as I could with JJ McCarthy to see if there was any tangible upside for the rest of this year, and I just don't see it. We now have enough of a sample where he kind of meets the minimum plays required to be in the database of starting quarterbacks so far this year. And out of all of those quarterbacks, he is dead last in EPA plus CPOE score, completion percentage over expected. Dead last. I mean, he's been worse than Dylan Gabriel, if that's possible. And if we put further context on that on that composite score and look at all the quarterbacks since 2021, he's in the bottom 3. His composite score is exactly the same as the Colts' Anthony Richardson last year. And the only one that's worse was Zach Wilson at the New York Jets, I think in 2021. So let me ask you, Matt, if Anthony Richardson or Zach Wilson went on the road against this Green Bay Packers team and the spread was under a touchdown, I don't think you're betting Richardson or Zach Wilson, are you?
No, but I also don't want to pull the trigger on the Pack. I mean, like I'll admit, I am market low on the Packers. Like there's no doubt about it. Like I am full on market low on the Packers because this team, I can't stand teams that go out there and play with their food every game. And like that's what this team does. Like every single game, there's a 20-minute lull and you just go, what is going on with this team? Like, how is this even possible that they're doing this? And, to back here, but I mean, there's a lot of credence to your bet. I mean, Steven, if you go to the eye test too, as opposed to just those stats, our friends over at PFF, same deal. Like JJ McCarthy is only ahead of 2 quarterbacks who are no longer quarterbacking. Like Jake Browning and Carson Wentz are the only 2 quarterbacks that have a worse grade than JJ McCarthy in the NFL so far this year. So again, the advanced stats back it up. The eye test guys back it up. Like everything that he's just been completely atrocious. But the Packers have let everyone hang around. Worse teams than the Vikings, that's for sure. They've lost to worse teams than the Vikings. At home, they've lost to worse teams than the Vikings.
I can't refute that for sure. I'm just hoping at home in a division game that they have their full focus. I saw Jaden Reed tweeted a picture of him putting a helmet on this week, so maybe there's a chance that they get Jaden Reed back. If not this week, it seems like it's coming soon. But if it's not this week, I still like Christian Watson getting more involved in the offense, his explosive ability down the field. I think they've been lacking that with him coming off the long-term injury last year. Last week, by far his best game with a couple of touchdowns against the Giants. So, and I've said in weeks past that I think the Vikings are susceptible to giving up explosive plays because their pressure rate is a lot lower than what their blitz rate is, which means they're going to be leaving guys on an island on the back end of those blitzes that don't get home. So, and the Packers already are a team that when you get their A game, they're hitting chunk plays down the field with Jordan Love. That's volatile, obviously, like you said, but I think this has got to be at least 7, in my opinion.
New England Patriots are on the road at the Cincinnati Bengals, and you want to talk about line movement. How about this thing sitting at 8.5, and then Joe Burrow comes out and practices, and it goes to 7.5, and then Joe Burrow goes out and practices again. We're seeing 5.5s now out there in the market, still sitting 6 at Circa, but 5.5 at DraftKings, 5.5 at Caesars. 51.5 is our total here in this one. Now, Steven, Zach Taylor did a pretty good explanation of this, which he said, Joe Flacco has not been practicing on Wednesdays anyway, right? And so it's like, it was a good time to go out and get Burrow reps. Now, he did practice again today, but I'm still not sold they're going to throw him out there in this game against New England unless they honestly believe, and I think it's so foolish of this franchise, but listen, they've done some really stupid things. Unless they really think they can make the playoffs, which, newsflash, they cannot. But unless they think they can make the playoffs, like, why would you kind of weirdly rush him back where you have a short week game next week? So it's not like he has to wait a whole week to play again. And you could go in, and in theory, one path to the playoffs would be to win your division. And you could knock off, the Ravens, the Steelers seem to be on the ropes, like all the stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. Are you under the impression he's going to play?
I'm not convinced yet either. I think it's probably 50-50 at this point. I'll say this. I'm looking at the market right now, and this was initially all Joe Burrow support and action. And like you said, moved all the way to 5.5 at one point earlier today on Thursday.
It's 5.5 at 2 books right now.
I'm seeing some 6.5 pop up too. Hit that refresh button real quick. See if you see the same thing. I'm seeing some 6.5 here as well on New England here. So it makes me wonder if we're starting to head back the other way. If it's under, are you ready to make a move right now? Would you feel bad or not feel comfortable or feel like you made a bad bet that's probably going to lose? Even if you bet Patriots under a touchdown right now at 6.5 or better, and it winds up being Burrow rushed back with a bad offensive line and one of the worst defenses we've seen in the past 5 years, I'd still feel pretty good about it, to be honest with you, even if I'm wrong about Burrow.
So I see there's a 5.5 at Caesars, and I'm in a Caesars jurisdiction. So yeah. I'm going to play the 5.5 on the Patriots because here's the thing. One thing we haven't mentioned yet, no Jamar Chase in this game as well. So Jamar Chase has been suspended. And so like the upside of bringing Burrow back, which does bring some variance to this because he's awesome, but the upside is limited because you don't have that receiver out there in the market. You know, I mean, like I think this might be a little bit too much of people getting super excited about Burrow coming back just because he's a really, really good player and not really looking at what they're going to be up against, which is one of the best run defenses we've seen in a hot minute, a receiving core that doesn't have your number one wide receiver. Oh, by the way, a top 5 receiver in all the NFL. And 2, a New England team that is absolutely rocking and rolling right now.
Yeah. So I just refreshed my screen and, don't throw stones at glass houses when you're the screen that isn't refreshed yet. I'm seeing between 5.5 and 6.5, like you said. Mm-hmm. And the 5.5 is juiced that I'm seeing. I would bet the 6 at Circa right now. Like I think that's a great bet on the Patriots. The Bengals are such a flawed team. They weren't good to start the year when Burrow was out there anyway. They still had the same issues and no Jamar Chase in this game. Full transparency, I had a very early week teaser that included the Patriots, which is a kind of a bad CLV teaser at this point, down to -2 when this was at -8.
Yeah.
I still feel fine about it. They're going to win this game. I don't have any fear that even if Burrow starts that they're going to lose this game to the Bengals. So yeah, it's clearly we both agree it's Patriots or nothing in this game.
Yeah. I'm not going to say I did it because I didn't, but whatever, but I made the bet and then like Caesars went back to 6. So maybe I'm just so respected, Steven. It's maybe I'm just so respected that they went back to 6. But no, it's probably everybody that's listening to the show right now that went out and made the bet. But yeah, it just, to me, a little bit of an overreaction to Joe Burrow be back. And as you can attest to everyone that's never listened to any of our content, there's no bigger stand for Joe Burrow than me. But got to have Jamar Chase out there. Got to have Hendrickson. You got to, it's just, there's too much love going on there with that. Okay. Jacksonville Jaguars on the road at the Arizona Cardinals. This is 2.5 or 3 in favor of the Jags on the road over Arizona. 47.5, the prevailing total out there in the industry. This looks like this is going to toggle back and forth between 2.5 and 3 up until kickoff, because as Steven has that on his screen right now at Circa, it is now gone to 2.5 at Circa. So it seems like people are taking the 3s, taking the 2.5s, taking the 3s, taking the 2.5s with all of that. And, Steven, we know no Kyler Murray. It's going to be Jacoby Brissett again. No Marvin Harrison. I don't really think that even matters, but maybe I'm mistaken. The guy hadn't really been an impact player anyway, so I don't know. I'm not scared that Marvin Harrison isn't going to be out there.
Michael Wilson,
what is your thoughts on Jacksonville having to head out west and but it's a decent little travel spot for them.
Yeah, my thoughts are quite the indictment of the Cardinals draft process and willingness to develop players when your top 10 overall pick wide receiver misses a couple weeks and Michael Wilson looks much, much better than him. So he balled out. So I think as far as the side, I don't have a play here. I would have been willing to take the Jags -2.5 with complete injury information with the Cardinals. They have a ton of injuries still going into this game, just like they did last week, but I don't have full confirmation of who's going to be in, who's going to be out. until Friday or Saturday. So the market's already moved. They feel confident that the Cardinals are just going to have too many injuries again in this game. But the total is still in play for me here. I mean, we're looking at 47.5. So we're about a half point over that key number of 47. But if last week was any indication that even with a completely decimated defense, that Jacoby Brissett can't keep up and contribute to a total, I don't know what is a better indication. I mean, he broke the NFL record for completions in a game. Michael Wilson goes completely wild in that one. We still have a Jaguars defense that I think is below average pass defense in the NFL. If this is confirmed that all these guys are going to miss again on defense for Arizona, I'm going to be pretty interested in an over here, Matt, for sure. This Arizona team kind of profiles to me now as like a JV 49ers makeup, where you have an offense that can push the ball and a defense that now can't stop anybody.
The another thing just for fantasy players out there and anyone that's like looking to upgrade a lineup or at least just stash something on your bench so nobody else can get him. They did open the 21-day window for Trey Benson. He's out there practicing actually for this Arizona team. He will easily take over as running back one for them the second he is able to make it back onto the field, because they have nobody. And so, it could be as early as this week, actually. So just, maybe go scoop him up and throw him into onto your bench at least and see what's going on. Cleveland Browns travel out here to Las Vegas. This is going to happen down the street for me. This is 3.5-4 in favor of the Raiders at home over Cleveland. 36.5 is the total. It will be the Shedeur Sanders show. And Steven, I took an over on Shedeur Sanders at 157.5 passing yards, which is just laughably low. Here's the thing. People are always talking about like how terrible he is and how terrible that looks and whatever and all like that. Luke McCown, if you don't follow him on Twitter, guys, like go and look. There's an awesome thread from Luke McCown on there, and it's way longer than I'm going to get, but I'll just give you the summary real quick on this. Luke McCown, basically a career backup in the NFL, says, I don't think people really understand what a backup does. And he's like, you get no snaps whatsoever during the week with the ones, like zero. You get 0 snaps with the ones. And he's like, most of the time you are out there and you are running the scout team, which means you're running plays that aren't your team's plays. You're not even running your team's playbook. You're running the other team's playbook. And especially now add in the fact that you're a rookie and you've never played before. Like, yeah, you're going to look terrible when you go out there for the first time or whatever. And he's like, it's a complete difference when you know you're going to start and you get a week under center to actually, run your plays in practice with the guys on the team and all that. Again, it's a long thread. It's more detailed than I just gave, but it actually opened my eyes because, shocker, I've never been on an NFL field. I don't really know about all of that stuff. And he's just like, yeah, I mean, it's no shock to me when a rookie comes in and looks terrible when he gets thrown into a game, because the dude's literally playing snaps, not only for the first time, but he's playing snaps with dudes he's never even lined up with and has never played with and probably hasn't been running the plays of your own team that week. So made a bunch of sense to me. So I think Shedeur can throw for 160 yards against this Raiders team.
It's a Zach Wilson line.
Yeah.
For a guy who's getting his first start. We just don't know, right? Like, granted, 21 dropbacks last week at a minus 16.6 EPA is about as dreadful as it gets, but it's the smallest sample size you can possibly imagine. He's getting a full week of practice here with the starters, to your point. And this is a classic NFL betting spot. The lower the total, the more valuable the points are. And a 4 is available on the Browns, who have, without question, the best unit in this game with their defense. Mm-hmm. And Matt, the Raiders are closer to the Titans than they are the Browns, in my opinion. I'm not even sure that this should be 3, let alone 4. And give whatever home field you want. I mean, I guess there's always the small chance that a few members of the Browns and their 2 wins go and have a night like CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens had last week out in Vegas, and we get a little Vegas flu going into this. But short of that narrative, the numbers on the page scream this is a valuable bet to get 4 points with such a low total. There were preseason games with totals higher than this.
Yeah.
And I also have no doubt that I'm getting the better coaching staff without question against Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly, who can't do anything. I mean, even if you want to say, okay, Geno's looked better since Brock Bowers came back over the past 3 games, I wouldn't even argue that. He still had a negative EPA. His success rate has still only been about league average. He's got a 4.4 yard average depth of target. For context, that is way below Aaron Rodgers, who is the next lowest at 5.7. That's a joke how low that ADOT is. This is a fake gimmicky offense that can't do anything because their offensive line is in complete shambles. And I'll give another stat for you here, maybe another prop here, Matt. Myles Garrett, there are props for him to break the sack record at even money. Are you interested in that? He needs 8 in the next 7 games to break the sack record. He's had a couple of games recently with like 5 and 7 sacks. Tell me he's not getting at least 2 sacks against this offensive line in the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm a little intrigued by that price on Myles Garrett to break the sack record.
Yeah, no, I mean, and Geno like has no pocket presence anymore. Like, he holds on to the ball too long. Like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot working in his favor to at least get 2 or 3 in this one.
The point is, you don't need Shedeur Sanders to play well for the Browns to cover the spread. And that's why it's attractive to me.
One last little stat here on the Raiders, then we'll circle back to Thursday Night Football. By the way, stick around, guys, for the bonus show here. We will talk Atlanta, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Dallas, also Tampa Bay, and the Rams. Stephen, the Las Vegas Raiders lead the NFL in negative plays for negative yardage, which I'm sure everyone would figure that's the case anyway. However, the interesting stat about that is that the team that is number 1 in not having negative plays is the Rams. The Raiders have over twice as many plays as the Rams for negative yards than the Rams do. Like, I mean, twice as many plays for negative yardage than the Rams have on the season. Like, offensive line can't do anything. Geno holds onto the ball too long. Ashton Genty is not firing into the gaps and all the stuff and everything. They throw balls behind the line of scrimmage and get tackled for losses. Like, it's just a complete mess here in Vegas.
Yeah, I can't believe that the Raiders are a 4-point favorite against somebody. And you can joke about Shedeur Sanders all you want. I get it. But I know Geno has struggled this year, and I know what this Raiders team is. I can't say for sure what Shedeur is. I can say what I think I know, but I'm getting 4 points in a total with 36. That's trending down. Might be 35.5 by kickoff. So that is a classic betting spot in the NFL.
Guys, Thursday Night Football coming to you here in about 20 minutes. Buffalo and Houston. Stephen, we are 4.5 at Circa. We are 4.5 at 1, 2, 3, 4 of the big national books out there. 5, there is one rogue 5.5 out there. So anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5. So as we say always, shop around, make sure that you're getting the best number out there with this one. We are still sticking at 44.5 at every book but one. So that seems to be where this total is going to go off. I don't get the Houston love. I think there's a much more likely outcome of Buffalo winning this game at margin than it is Houston pulling an outright upset.
100% agree with you. Thoughts and prayers to us going against the market steam here, but I've bet the Bills to cover this number. I got a bad number at 5.5. I'd still bet it at 4.5, obviously. I think this is a big step up in class for Davis Mills. I think the Bills have the best offensive line in football that should be able to neutralize this pass rush for the Texans. And as far as the props go, I like Khalil Shakir as an anytime touchdown here. If there's a weakness in the Texans' pass defense, it has been in the slot. They've been giving up the 5th most receptions to slot receivers this year. So yeah, say a little prayer for us because it's never fun going against the market steam. That's for sure.
Guys, I know you're going to look and you're going to say, man, but that Buffalo run defense, it's so incredibly bad. I don't think Houston is equipped to take advantage of that. I mean, listen, I like Woody Marks, and I actually think there's some upside to him. I'm glad they made the move to him, Stephen, overall. But at the end of the day, this offensive line is just not equipped to handle any competent defense, and Buffalo's defense is at least competent. And so I don't think that we see Woody Marks just go, nuclear in this game.
Yeah, and if you're near the Circa Sportsbook Kentucky in Bowling Green down in Franklin, Kentucky at the Mint Gaming Hall, come check that out as well. That's where I'm broadcasting from. This place is the nicest sportsbook outside Circa in Las Vegas. It's the best.
Guys, appreciate you joining us, and good luck on your Thursday night football bets.